Hello everyone, and welcome. Today, we are diving into a fascinating and incredibly important topic in biology, viruses. We'll explore what these tiny agents are, how they are structured, how they reproduce, and their impact on us. This session is part of your General Education Diploma Sciences program, specifically focusing on life sciences. Let's get started. To begin, let's understand what viruses are. Look at the image on the slide. It shows different types of viruses and other microbes. Viruses are truly tiny germs, much smaller than bacteria. In fact, they are so small you need a powerful electron microscope to see them. Now, here's a key point. Viruses are not considered alive in the traditional sense. We call them infectious agents. Why aren't they considered living? Well, they don't have many of the features that typical living things do. For example, they can't grow on their own, they can't make their own energy, and they can't even reproduce independently outside of a living body. They are, in a way, biological puzzles, existing right on the edge of what we define as life. Despite being on the edge of life, viruses do have some very important characteristics. First, all viruses carry genetic information. This is crucial because it's their set of instructions. And second, just like all living organisms, viruses can change over time through mutations. This ability to mutate is why we often see new strains of viruses emerge, like different versions of the flu each year. We'll explore what DNA, RNA, and mutations mean in more detail on our next slide. Let's take a closer look at that genetic information and what a mutation really is. All living things, from the smallest bacteria to us, rely on genetic information to operate. Viruses are no different. They carry this information in the form of DNA or RNA. Think of DNA as the master blueprint. It's primarily responsible for storing and transferring genetic information long-term. Imagine it as a giant instruction manual for building and running an organism. Structurally, DNA is typically a double-stranded molecule, famously forming that twisted ladder shape we call a double helix. Its sugar component is deoxyribose, and its building blocks, called bases, are adenine, A, thymine, T, guanine, G, and cytosine, C. Always remember, A pairs with T, and C pairs with G. Now, RNA is like the messenger and the worker. Its main job is to take the instructions from DNA and use them to build proteins, which do most of the work in cells. RNA is usually a single-stranded molecule, which makes it more flexible for its various roles. It contains the sugar ribose, and its bases are adenine, A, uracil, U, guanine, G, and cytosine, C. Notice that uracil, U, replaces thymine, T, in RNA, so it pairs with U. Finally, let's talk about mutations. A mutation is simply any alteration or change in that genetic blueprint either in the DNA or RNA sequence. Think of it like a typo in the instruction manual. These changes can happen spontaneously, often due to errors when genetic material is copied, or they can be caused by external factors like certain chemicals or radiation. Mutations are really important for viruses because they allow them to change, adapt, and sometimes even become more harmful or resistant to treatments. This is how viruses evolve. Now that we understand their genetic material, let's look at how viruses are physically constructed. They are surprisingly simple compared to a living cell. The key parts of a virus include: first, at the core, is their genetic information, the DNA or RNA we just discussed. This is the main, essential part. Surrounding and protecting this genetic material is a protein shell called a capsid. Its primary job is to safeguard that vital genetic code. Some, but not all, viruses have an outer layer called an envelope. This envelope is actually derived from the host cell's own outer membrane when the virus leaves the cell. Lastly, some viruses have spike-like proteins on their surface. These aren't just for decoration, they are crucial for helping the virus recognize, connect with, and enter specific types of host cells. Think of them as keys that fit specific locks on our cells. This is where viruses really show their unique nature. Since they can't reproduce on their own, viruses absolutely need a host cell, another living cell, to make copies of themselves. They are like parasites at the cellular level. They reproduce inside these host cells. The process generally involves the virus injecting its genetic material into the host cell. Once the genetic code is inside, the host cell, unknowingly, starts using its own machinery to make more viral parts, essentially becoming a virus factory. A common way viruses then release these new copies is through something called the lytic cycle. In the lytic cycle, the virus rapidly makes many copies of itself inside the host cell until the cell literally bursts open, releasing all the new viral particles to go infect other cells. This bursting is what causes cell damage and leads to symptoms of illness. This also highlights why viruses are so difficult to eliminate from the body. They hide and replicate inside our own cells, making them hard targets for our immune system or medicines. So, what happens when viruses get into our bodies and reproduce? They cause sickness. We are all familiar with many viral diseases. Common examples include the flu or influenza. More recently, we've all experienced the impact of COVID-19, which is caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. When it comes to treatment, viral diseases are typically managed using vaccines and antiviral medicines. It's important to note that antibiotics, which treat bacterial infections, are not effective against viruses. Vaccines are a powerful tool because they work by helping your body create its own protection. They expose your immune system to a harmless part of the virus, teaching your body to produce antibodies that can fight off the actual infection if you encounter it later. Finally, let's touch on a special type of virus. While many viruses infect plants, animals, or humans, there are also viruses that specifically target bacteria. A virus that infects bacteria is called a bacteriophage. These are actually quite important in research and even potential treatments for bacterial infections. That concludes our overview of viruses. I hope this has given you a clearer understanding of these incredibly impactful, microscopic agents. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?